Have you ever noticed how many threads are a part of our daily lives? Twitter threads, Instagram threads, Facebook threads. The digital world is full of them. But beyond social media, there's another thread, a far more important one, the thread of your thoughts. Imagine if somebody could scroll through your mind the way that they scroll through their feed. What would they see? What patterns would emerge? Would your thoughts be in alignment with your actions? Or would they tell a scattered, disconnected story? Today I want to challenge you to examine the thread of your life. Is it strong and purposeful, or is it loose and unraveling? More importantly, if you don't like the pattern you see, are you willing to reweave it? For a long time, my own thread was frayed, tangled, and broken. I grew up poor, and when you grow up in poor neighborhoods, there's not usually a lot of positive role models, and I was looking up to the wrong people at a young age. By the time I was 13, I was smoking weed and drinking, which led me to struggle in school. I was making poor choices left and right. My life became a series of bad decisions, a thread woven in the fabric of failure. I surrounded myself with wrong people, made excuses, and lived without direction. Not only was I making mistakes, I was reinforcing them daily, which created a pattern that led me deeper into a life I didn't want. By the time I was 19, I was working a sales job around people who weren't the best of influence, and it rubbed off on me. Next thing I knew, I was popping pills, and 6 short months later, I was a full-blown heroin addict with a needle in my arm every day, doing whatever I could to fuel my addiction. I was the lowest of lowlifes. I would steal things, pawn them, and most often, those things were my family's belongings, and this lasted for almost 4 years. In 2018, I spoke at a funeral for one of my good friends. He died of an overdose. He fought hard, but never seemed to be able to untangle his threads. I have a cousin who I grew up with. He lived a half a block away from me, so same environment, same neighborhood role models. In fact, he was the one who I first started smoking weed and drinking with. He was my best friend. We were born 10 days apart and inseparable as kids. Currently, he's missing. He may be dead or off on another bender. Nobody knows. I have several other stories like this and some close calls of my own. I've had a gun to my head and a knife to my throat on a deal gone wrong. Luckily, I made it out with just a swollen face due to getting punched. As you could see, one small choice, like a loose thread, can unravel and spiral out of control until it eventually becomes the noose that chokes you from ever reaching your full potential. As for me, I decided to weave a new life. Right before I turned 24, I went into the mountains to face my bad decisions head on, and there I detoxed for a week. I came off that mountain with a commitment that I would never do anything that put me through that much pain ever again. Whatever's causing you pain, you too can change. Just like you can change the content on your Instagram page, you can change the content of your life. You can unfollow people on social media, but sometimes in real life, we have to make the tough decision to disengage from those that we've socialized with who no longer align with the individual that we strive to become. You decide to take action that can change the course of your future, just like I chose to get clean. I cut ties with negative influences, I focused on my goals, and started making the decisions that aligned with the individual that I wanted to become. Due to growing up poor, all my goals were centered around money, making it, growing it, and having more of it. And I succeeded. I built businesses, I invested, and I accumulated wealth. But after a decade of chasing financial success, I found myself at a low place once again. Money didn't bring fulfillment. And I was left asking, now what? I needed a new thread, so I created one. It was 39 days before my 37th birthday, and I decided to do something that the old version of me would never do. I walked into a room full of people and announced that I was going to run 37 miles on my 37th birthday. I heard a few chuckles, and that was all the motivation that I needed. I went home that very day and ran 3 miles and thought to myself, what was I thinking? I ended up training 10 times, and at midnight, the second I turned 37, I took off running. I ran for 9.5 hours and kissed the ground upon reaching mile 37. I did it. An act the old me felt impossible. Doing things that push us to our limits are the very things that transform us. If you keep following the same old thread and doing what you already know you can, you'll keep getting the same old results. 6 months after that birthday run, it was January 1st, 2022. I decided to set another challenge. I was going to work out twice a day for 1,000 consecutive days. And at first it was tough. My mind and body resisted. But eventually, the struggle became routine. It's not that it got easy. It was just my new normal. Too often we make a change and celebrate it for too long, forgetting that growth requires friction. You're not going to get new wins if you're busy celebrating old ones. And with this in mind, I reminded myself why I started. It was to push my limits. As I was approaching year 2 of my two-a-days, a thought struck me. Could I run 10 miles a day for all of 2024? My mind immediately said, there's no way. And that's when I knew I had to do it. If I could do it, I could once again prove to myself I was capable of doing things that even I thought were impossible. On January 1st, 2024, every day began with a 10-mile run followed by a gym session. On my toughest days, I would run 8 and walk 2, but I made it work. At the end of the year, I'd ran 4,015 miles, which was an average of 11 miles per day, while at the same time completing my original 1,000-day challenge on September 28th, 2024. But the 3-year mark was just a few short months away, so I maintained that routine until December 31st, 2024. Through this process of doing what once seemed impossible to me, I had to ask myself, what's something that this version of me can't even comprehend? As my 3-year challenge neared its end, I looked up the world record for the most consecutive half marathons and found it stood at 235 days. At that moment, the decision was easy. It was time to make my mark and become one of one. I decided to run a half marathon every single day for 365 days, which began on March 23rd. Through this journey, I realized something powerful. It's action that changes identity. The lost, hopeless, addicted version ceased to exist. He was replaced by somebody stronger, more disciplined, more resilient. If you find yourself at a low place and you're unsure of what to do, I challenge you. Start a new thread. Do something that the old version of you would never do. If your current thread isn't working, don't keep weaving the same pattern. Instead, create something bold, something extraordinary. Identify the crazy thing that you need to do. Doesn't have to be 37 miles, but what is your 37? What are you willing to sacrifice? For me, it was 2 to 3 hours a day dedicated to my physical fitness. But for you, it's whatever makes you feel so uncomfortable that it forces you to change the person you are in order to accomplish it. There's a version of you that you haven't met yet, a version that is fulfilled, confident, and capable of incredible things. But you're never going to find that version staying in place. You have to take action. You have to weave a new thread, one that leads to impact, growth, and purpose. Your journey to becoming remarkable starts when you create a new thread and you follow through. Or you can keep showing up as you always have. What thread will you choose? Thank you.